Erin, you're muted.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I'm muted. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Erin Owens. I'll be the moderator for this session titled Cultural Intelligence and Artificial Intelligence in LIS, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Before we begin, we have just a few housekeeping reminders. We have a code of conduct that we will adhere to during this conference. I've pasted the link in the chat for your reference. If you experience any issues related to conduct, please do contact us at the Gale Conference support email that is in that chat message. Please be sure your microphone is muted unless you are invited to unmute to ask a question. You can also use the chat box and the Q&A box to submit questions, which we can address at the end of the talk. Please be aware this session is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be shared. You can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters. Jennifer Perez Lara is currently pursuing her MLIS at San Jose State University and works part-time as a library technician at Miracosta College. Christy Barlas graduated in December 2025 with an MLIS from San Jose State University. She's currently working as an instructional design consultant for culturally competent research for library and information science. Dr. Michelle Villagran, an associate professor at San Jose State University School of Information, is an educator, speaker, entrepreneur, cultural intelligence expert, and diversity and inclusion consultant with over 30 years of experience in the public and private sectors. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer, Christy, and Dr. Villagran.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, Erin. Can everyone see my screen, the presentation slides?
Yes, looks
I could
good.
just get at them. Okay, awesome. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome, hello everyone, first of all, and welcome to our presentation today. So we just wanted to give you guys a quick overview. This session explores how cultural intelligence and artificial intelligence intersects in library and information science, specifically emphasizing that while AI offers exciting opportunities to improve services and access, it cannot replace the human judgment needed to navigate cultural competency, right? So we're going to be drawing on our CCRLIS research and professional experience today, and also discussing how librarians can help ensure AI is used ethically, inclusively, and in ways that reflect and serve diverse communities rather than enforcing existing biases. Awesome. So here's a quick overview of our team today. We won't dive too much into it since Erin already gave us a great introduction. But like she mentioned, my name is Jennifer. I'm here with Dr. Villagran and Christy Barlas. And then let's go ahead and start with the introduction of our project. So we wanted to give you guys a quick overview of our research project, which is the acronym is CCRLIS, which stands for Culturally Competent Research in Library and Information Science. This project is led by Dr. Villagran with the purpose of developing evidence-based interventions to improve cultural competence in library and information science research. Specifically, in applying cultural competence, cultural intelligence, and cultural humility to research team development and the research process. So just a quick little timeline of kind of how the project has been going. So phase one of the research started in 2025 with a focus on LIS professionals, which we'll dive into more in just a sec. We're currently in phase two, which is when the project became the focus of Dr. Villagran's sabbatical work. And in this phase, we're focusing on getting feedback from various cultural experts on a preliminary framework that was based upon the 2025 research. And this will continue throughout the rest of 2026. And then finally, the project has potential to continue into 2027, in which we will focus on finishing up various deliverables such as a course, a workbook, a scholarly text, and that'll be the end of phase three. Okay, so we wanted to get like a quick overview of kind of the familiarity of our audience today. Has anyone ever heard of cultural intelligence here? If you have, go ahead and drop a thumbs up. But it's totally okay if you haven't. We've kind of noticed that a lot of people may have heard of other cultural terms before. So we do have a couple thumbs up. That's awesome. So we'll dive more into cultural intelligence for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the term in just a sec. But we wanted to go over some key terms specifically to AI, and kind of our definitions of those terms that came up during the research, during this project. So for artificial intelligence, our version of this definition was the capacity of computers and other machines to exhibit or simulate intelligent behavior. So pretty straightforward. For generative AI, this technology generates various forms of content such as text, images, and even video. This type of technology can also be referred to as a generator and includes chatbots, which most of you may already be familiar with, right? So that's your typical like Copilot, ChatGPT, those types of technologies. And then finally, AI literacy is the ability to comprehend various aspects of artificial intelligence, which can include AI capabilities, limitations, and ethical considerations, and to use it for practical purposes. So critical thinking is absolutely necessary for AI literacy, as users need to analyze facts, evidence, observations, and arguments to make informed choices. Okay. So now we're going to be diving into our cultural terms. Some of you may have heard of these terms before, and we just wanted to do a little deep dive to highlight kind of the like intersectionality of these terms, and they are very similar and going hand in hand, but while also highlighting their differences. Um, so like I said, some of these may be familiar to you. Some of them have already been highlighted in library and information science specifically. Um, but starting with cultural competence, this is a concept that spans multiple disciplines, but our definition is drawn from Patricia Overall's framework specifically, which is tied to library services. And in this context, cultural competence is the ability to recognize the significance of culture in one's own life and the lives of others, to come to know and respect diverse cultural backgrounds through interactions and with individuals from various linguistic, cultural, and socioeconomic groups. So this version of cultural competence, as the definition highlights, aims to improve awareness of various cultural backgrounds, and some key aspects of cultural competence that we wanted to highlight through the graphic include adaptation, attitudes, and knowledge of traits and cultural norms. So the linearity of cultural competence is something that we do want to move away from, though, as it can be easily perceived as like a one and done thing, which is not true. That's you don't achieve cultural competence. It's not like the end of a finish line. It's something that requires constant reflection and work. So this is where cultural humility kind of comes in and addresses this gap. So, cultural humility really highlights the personal, lifelong commitment in which self evaluation and self critique are critical in keeping ourselves culturally humble. Cultural humility emphasizes self reflection on our beliefs and upbringing, which will enrich our interactions with cultures that are not our own. And positionality is key when keeping a culturally humble mindset, along with respect and appreciation. So the end goal is for everyone to be respected and appreciated for the cultural expertise, skills, and knowledge that they bring to the table. However, these two concepts do not address why some individuals are better at diverse cultural interactions than others, which is where cultural intelligence comes into play. So very quick definition, we're going to go more into it in the next slide, is that cultural intelligence refers to a person's ability to effectively function and navigate culturally diverse situations. So cultural intelligence, you might see the little acronym CQ a lot in our slides. That's what it stands for, CQ, is similar to other cognitive measures, right? So such as IQ or EQ, CQ is split up into four capabilities, which are drive, knowledge, strategy, and action, which we will go into on our next slide. So here's another little graphic. If you guys are interested in learning more about cultural intelligence, we have a link here that I can share in the chat, or I might have someone else share because it seems to not be working on my end. But we're going to go do a really quick overview here with you guys today so you have a little bit of context before we jump into the research that was conducted. So starting off with CQ Drive, this capability recognizes the psychological and emotional dimension to any intercultural interaction. So in simpler terms, this is one's level of interest, persistence, and confidence in multicultural interactions. So some people may have more confidence, some people may have less confidence. That's totally okay, but that's one of the skills in CQ. The next one is CQ knowledge, which emphasizes learning cultural schemas that can be dynamically applied rather than memorizing, fixed lists and facts, right? So that's kind of where cultural intelligence differs from cultural competence. Cultural competence kind of highlights memorization and learning these facts, while cultural intelligence really emphasizes a dynamic understanding of kind of just these norms that are present and that they're not always present all the time, right? Or that they could vary. Basically, in simpler terms, this is your understanding of other cultures and how they're similar yet different. And like I said, kind of having that understanding that you're not always going to have a single norm or a single whatever it may be in your cultural interaction. Moving on to CQ strategy, this is a unique capability as it requires all of the three other skills in cultural intelligence. It enables you to anticipate, monitor, and adjust your thinking rather than resorting to rigid knowledge. What this means is that this is your own personal awareness and ability to plan for, to own personal awareness and ability, to plan for multicultural interactions, or like the title implies, strategize. And finally, CQ action. This enables you to adjust your behavior in culturally appropriate ways while staying true to your identity and intent. So this is our ability to adapt when relating and working in multicultural contexts, adjusting our behavior if we notice something. That's what CQ action really highlights. So overall, everyone possesses these skills, whether they're aware of it or not. And these skills are also not fixed. So they're like IQ, right? They can be improved with appropriate time and dedication. We will touch more on that later in the presentation, but for now, we're going to transition into the research aspect of our project. Okay, so let me transition over to my colleague, Christy, for the next slide.
Thanks, Jenny. So I was the graduate research assistant for Dr. Villagran in 2025, and we conducted an interview and survey. Next slide, please. Regarding AI, we asked participants these questions. I'm not going to read them all right now because we're going to go one by one through them, and you can use this as a reference. Next slide, please. From participants, they mostly discussed how AI literacy focused on the importance of understanding how AI functions, that it's trained on imperfect data, and how human oversight is sorely needed throughout the process of using AI, which I'm sure you all are aware of. In the discussions and from survey responses, a lot of the things participants talked about reflected cognitive CQ and behavioral CQ, which, like Jenny mentioned, even though people might not know the terms CQ or cognitive CQ, their thoughts, their intention, their actions reflect that skill and intelligence already. Next slide, please. So for the first question we asked, in what ways do you think cultural intelligence is becoming more critical as AI tools are increasingly adopted in LIS? Most participants talked about how AI training is not culturally intelligent, and a majority of sources reflect national narratives. There is cultural information that is missing from the output responses of generative chatbots. AI's function is to aggregate majority opinions. Therefore, it is naturally missing perspectives of cultural communities that are smaller or marginalized, and it then perpetuates that cultural inaccuracy. And a participant in the interview said, this is replicating cultural inaccuracy, devaluation, and erasure of knowledge that we already see in our physical materials. This isn't new, it's just in a new domain with AI. Next slide. Our second question asked if participants could share an example of CEQ that influenced how they or their organization approach technology or information services. Most talked about the benefit of using ethical guides for AI use, or whether they wanted to see that implemented in their library or in their institution. But many talked about how it's difficult to implement change for cultural intelligence or cultural inclusivity when they don't have that cross-departmental or institutional support of CQ. Having that base layer of like, this is valuable and this can really benefit not only the patrons or our students, but our colleagues and our professional practices. The other thing is that the AI is already created. There's only so much we can do when vendors are implementing AI that's trained on imperfect data or doesn't use AI instructions that value social justice, human values, and instead allows things that we don't agree with to happen with the use of AI, for example. One participant said, whose voices are being left out? And for us, what work do we need to do in order to capture the voices that are missing? Next slide. We also asked if participants ever encountered or observed examples of cultural bias in AI applications used in libraries or archives, and how was this addressed or was it not addressed? And participants emphasized, they didn't have specific examples mostly. They talked about the need for human oversight at multiple stages throughout using AI. And one participant talked about their library reclassifying medical subject headings. And some of the suggestions were AI or derivative of AI suggestions. And when these were released and published, the community said, these are problematic. We need these to be changed. We want this to reflect the values of our community. And they listened. So one point that I wanted to highlight was this need for dialogue and for community advocacy to help ensure that cultural intelligent changes are happening. Mistakes happen. People can't know everything or be masters of cultural intelligence for every single culture. That's why we need diverse opinions and we need to incorporate that into decision making. Next slide. For our fourth question, we asked, what are some promising practices you've seen or would like to see for embedding cultural intelligence into the design and deployment of AI in LIS? Some mentioned adding culturally sensitive metadata to older records, or actively recruiting people from different cultures to train the AI, going into the instruction and the prioritization of data in AI algorithms to make sure that there's a diverse perspective included rather than seeing the results of culturally inaccurate algorithm outputs. Another participant mentioned collaborating LIS with computer science and with other information science, not only to help instruct students with AI literacy and the importance of having that outside perspective, because LIS is so human focused, I feel like, with our focus of how information is handled, interpreted, created, and how can we build a partnership there? Someone mentioned, how do we train LIS professionals to think about ethical ways that we should be using AI in our teaching, in our own learning, professionally, and in practice? I see we do have a comment in the chat, and I can't remember if we mentioned this, but we will be reading comments and questions at the end of the presentation and addressing those. Next slide, please. And finally, we asked, what advice would you give to LIS professionals or institutions beginning to explore the integration of CQ into AI-driven practices? Again, there's a big need for support to understand what CQ is and the value of it for patrons, professionals, in our own practices. So having that infrastructure to support the integration of CQ is first and foremost, and then creating guidelines of AI use from libraries and archives directly from our own departments, from our own perspectives, not prescriptive necessarily, but they can be value focused. They can show the intention of how we want to utilize AI in our own instruction and our professional practices. And then considering the long-term sustainability and repercussions of AI use. Participants talked about not only the environmental impacts, but also thinking the repercussions of relying on AI as a crutch. How is it taking away from our own ability to write or critically think and focus on our processes if we are using AI to create a speed run version of our creations? We want to maintain that there is human oversight, but also the quality of human work in our work. And I believe that our profession really supports that and can agree with that. One participant said, the advice that they would give is just being aware of our own biases and recognizing that AI has no filter when it comes to bias. It's not programmed for that. It's not made for that generally. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Villagran to talk about some of the opportunities for CQ and AI.
Thank you, Christy. Hopefully you all can hear me. I'm in Belgium, so the Wi-Fi is a little spotty. With these, there's three that I'm going to highlight and really looking at in light of the ACRL AI competencies, which if you haven't looked at those, take a look. But they're the AI competencies for academic library workers. And also I'm connecting that model to, and those standards to the CQ model, which you saw earlier. So with user engagement, thinking about how you can enhance user engagement. Next slide, Jenny, to user engagement. Thank you. So first of all, the use of reference services. For example, chat reference, where AI bots are assisting with maybe foundational or factual questions, such as hours of operation or basic definitions. The difficult questions can be routed to librarians, or even if there's potential for query assistance, maybe it's what are other potential keywords, those simple search queries. AI is not a replacement of any human, whether that's student workers, faculty, staff, the public. And of course, we have to fact check. So that's thinking about the first competencies when it comes to reference services. Secondly, recommendation tools. So AI can be used to help one learn about other materials. So potentially other articles based on potentially what a patron is seeking, or even as an exploratory nature, similar to, when you shop online and then it gives you, okay, you like this shirt, it's tracking you, right? And then you're going to like these shirts. We're giving you other recommendations. And then there's the aspect of integration into catalogs and helping with searching. And this is something where you need to speak with your vendors if you aren't already, and that integration within your systems to see what is included, isn't included, you want it included, and do some user testing. This is often helpful for users that are novice, though, and can be great just in simple searches. And AI can also help with integration when it comes to underserved populations, such as usability for English as a second language users, or even those that are neurodivergent and those with disabilities. So there's often a lot of opportunity with AI, and this is just one use case tying it to the ACRL AI standards. And also the engagement of citation support. So how many of you have to create bibliographies? Yes, AI can help, but of course we have to go back and check it and make sure it's correct. There's often caveats, though. I'll mention a lot, and there's many more. But these are, of course, customizable per your library, per your vendors, the resources you're utilizing. Also being transparent when AI is being used in your reference services. Also thinking about privacy and even your retention standards. So how does AI play into that? And also thinking about preserving intellectual freedom when it comes to the use of AI. Okay, next slide, Jenny, to bias mitigation. Okay, great. So looking at these, and you'll see here, so the first one, CQ knowledge, really thinking about aspects related to the training data. It may not be representative. AI systems can perpetuate those biases that Christy mentioned. And therefore awareness, and this is where use of CQ knowledge comes in, awareness of the systems, the information sources you're using, they may privilege certain cultures, which then marginalizes others. So thinking about and identifying and addressing those biases, rather than assuming that an AI tool, an AI system is neutral, which we know they are not. Again, it produces this new national narrative. And also explaining how these biases are inherent to algorithms that influence what information is highlighted, hidden, or excluded. Another point here too is around critically evaluating sources of information about AI for accuracy and bias. I think we all do that inherently as library individuals. We, fact check, we check our sources and our claims, but making it an active practice, and that's where CQ action, you're actually taking a behavior, a step, maybe reframing or rechanging your action to ensure that those sources are accurate. So you're actually changing your own practice, or that of supporting a particular patron in their own practice. And then explaining how these biases influence which information is being included or excluded, which I mentioned earlier. So again, this ties to CQ action because you're actually evaluating, you're doing this, and you may not think of it, but it's part of the process where you're actually evaluating the tools based on the quality, the even diversity of the training data, the relevance of the data to the intended use, and even the ethical practice behind it. Next slide. So last one I'll highlight as opportunities as related to culturally responsive services. So there's several here tying to the AI competencies for academic library workers, as well as the CQ model. And we'll start thinking about equitable practices. So when using AI, thinking about how you can advocate for more equitable access to technologies and for AI literacy purposes. So identifying and addressing those barriers that you might come across. And particularly, I'll point out a few, given as a former librarian, I always think about the costs. So the costs of these services, right? The restrictions that might also come with these license agreements, or even the centralized control of these technologies. And I would also add here the privacy concerns, which isn't in Competency 1.1, but I would add that there as well. Also think about the protection, and this ties to what I mentioned earlier about protecting and respecting diverse identities when you are implementing and using AI. So this is actually using CQ knowledge. You're taking aspects you've learned or even from the AI competencies and thinking about, okay, I'm aware of this practice. Maybe I need to go do some research on this practice. And they're actually applying it based on the knowledge and awareness you have related to the particular aspect of the tool. And then we have the use. So potentially, when you're using AI, there might be an appropriate use. Are there specific use cases when it comes to services you offer that AI is more aligned? And what's that impact? So this is where you're trying to be strategic. So 3.1 here, we're really thinking about what's my strategy with the AI tool? Is there an impact? Is it sufficient to actually roll it out within my library? Or is it something I really need to do some more research on, really get that knowledge down, and then do some piloting, and then put it in place with a strategy, and then take action. And then, of course, making sure that it's welcoming, accessible, and it's relevant. So fostering that innovation in your library services and also being creative. So how can AI be used within your library systems or used as a solution to help, whether it's prioritizing inclusivity or ensuring your services are user-friendly. All of these aspects we have to think. So those are all opportunities. And now, next slide. We're going to, of course, talk about limitations of these AI tools and addressing the cultural contexts without human oversight. So I'll turn it over to Christy.
Thanks, Dr. V. And this actually will a little bit address the question that we have in the chat. And the question is, how do we reconcile differences between cultural perspectives when training AI tools? This presentation is for people coming to use AI as a consumer and a user rather than training the AI directly. But I wanted to bring up the question here because one of the main AI tool limitations in addressing cultural context is that the purpose of AI is to just aggregate information based on the training data and the given instructions. And both of these can be biased. If AI categorizes photos of dogs into breeds categories, but only 5 breeds are given, then every photo of a dog that's given to that AI is going to be categorized into the only categories available. So that can be incorrect. The other way that AI can be incorrect is that the instructions can be limited in oversimplifying, overgeneralizing categorization. I don't even know what I'm saying now, but I think you know what I mean. If the instructions are too generalized, if the instructions say that anything similar to this one photo of a dog equals dog, and it's got 4 legs, it's got a head, it's got a tail, then why can't it categorize like a fox or a small creature? So we need to consider that the training data and the instructions can be biased. But if we're coming at it as a user, we don't have the tools to edit that AI directly. If you get into coding, if you create your own AI from, say, Google Gemini or something, then you can control those to reflect better data values. If it values, say, DEI, for example, then you can control that. But as a user, there's only so much we can do. And for users, how do we interact with imperfect AI, which is it's always going to be? One way is reflecting on our prompting strategies. What can we ask AI directly? What information is missing here? What are perspectives of communities are missing from this data? Can they find it, or can they lead us into better resources that would have that information? Maybe it can't access that information behind a paywall, but maybe we can reach out to them. The other thing with AI tool limits is that increasing values of DEI requires human input. And this will reflect our human values of social justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, but it may not be accurate. For example, incarceration rates are specific. There's more incarceration rates for marginalized communities, but that statistic doesn't reflect the oppressive and discriminatory practices that lead to those statistics. So if AI is reporting statistics or information based on what is, it isn't framing it within the context of why that is occurring. So we can, on our end, prime our chatbots to prioritize DEI and to consider what could be the factors that are influencing these outcomes or these circumstances. But we have to know that AI is still limited in reporting what is and what has been reported the most, and we have to use our own critical thinking to figure out what is missing from that piece. And of course, we need the support of algorithm developers to increase the diversity of training data. We need to support the advocacy for more diverse training data, but also diverse algorithm trainers and compensating them fairly, making sure that the AI data that's being trained on is ethically sourced, it is compensating the people who is creating that data, and it is used in an ethical manner, basically. And finally, there needs to be transparent accountability and ethical governance standards, not only in, say, the library, but also in departments and the institutions and in our country. But for us, what is in our capacity, again, we can go back to starting a guide of AI use for our library and our archives and consider how do we want to approach it so we can lead by example for patrons, colleagues, and collaborators. Next slide, please. And I will turn it over to, oh, I think I'm the first one, so I'll just continue with the strategies. We came up with 3 strategies each, and I'll go with the first one. Next slide, please. And this focuses more on that CQ factor of how to approach AI. One thing with CQ Drive, which is also motivational CQ, is intention. Who am I to do this work? This was a question that I really loved from a participant about their research projects and their professional work in general is, who am I in the narrative of this work? And in terms of AI, I think of it like, how am I framing this? Whose expert opinion can I search for to really validate the information that I'm looking at? And am I making sure that I'm not making assumptions about the work that I'm doing from my own expertise, understanding the limits of that and really seeking the opinions and the expertise of people who have been paving the way, but maybe haven't been as recognized as others. CQ knowledge, otherwise known as cognitive CQ, is about information. Again, asking whose voices are missing from this narrative? Are they from marginalized communities? And asking AI directly, like, who is missing from this picture? Can they point it out? Can they find the resources for that? And if they can't, then acknowledging that in the work itself. CQ strategy, which is also metacognitive CQ, so self-reflection. Am I crafting prompts that are inclusive? Again, asking the chatbot directly. And CQ action or CQ strategy, adjusting behaviors. And that can mean asking for help from somebody who is an expert. A cultural insider is somebody who is a member of a cultural community. So really asking somebody directly, like, what is your experience? Do you resonate with this information? How much of your experience is missing from this AI output, for example? Next slide, please. And I believe I'll turn it over to Dr. V.
Thank you, Christy. So my strategy is around, I have 2 slides here, around CQ, specifically when you're using AI tools. So think about the prompts, the hallucinations. And if you want, you could take a look at competency 3.3, where it's really specific to critically analyzing AI technologies using a multifaceted approach, which I love reading 3.3 because it aligned directly with the CQ model. Like, this is CQ model it's 4 elements of the whole capability. And so the first one, the drive, it's really thinking about the curiosity, or how willing are you or your patron to engage with AI critically. And Christy mentioned it, and I think even earlier, this came out in our interviews about really using AI, but from a critical perspective. So engaging with it, the tool, with utilizing critical thinking, not just throwing things in there, whatever you get out, and that's good. No, it's how do you engage with AI and in an aspect in which you are actually critically thinking about it, and even what you put in as the prompt. So that importance of understanding what AI actually is. It's a tool. It's a technology. It's, it's like an ATM machine. It's going to spit out what you ask for. You want $100? It's going to give you $100. You got to be very specific. If you want 20s, you want 10s, you want 5s, you have to tell it what you want. Otherwise, it's not going to support your learning. It's not going to support your research. You'll get something back, but it might not be accurate and all the other things we mentioned earlier. Knowledge. So this is where in the library profession, and we're perfect profession for us to be in with AI technologies, it's really examining those technical aspects. And we mentioned some of them, the relevance and accuracy, but also the ethical components. So what biases are there? Is this fair? What about how transparent it is? And understanding that, again, these are just tools. They are technical tools, supposedly to make our lives easier. But built into them, we have to then use the critical thinking, because then it really impacts our own learning, our own practices. So knowledge, again, is that awareness and the understanding of the tools and how to use them, but then also how you apply it. So next slide, Jenny. So continuing with the model, strategy. Now, with strategy, there's a lot of pieces in the CQ model. There's your, even before you go into an engagement. So you're going to meet someone and you pre-plan. And after you debrief, or you come up with a strategy, right? Or you ask, like, you're going to go to a job interview. You don't just show up at a job interview. You figure out what to wear. You plan ahead of time. You have questions to ask the people interviewing you, right? And then after you do some debrief, you do your thank you follow-up. Same with strategy. So with the AI tools, you're actually intentionally using prompts and really evaluating what the output is. And then you're comparing it with other sources. You're checking and debriefing with yourself, or maybe even others, what those results are, and considering whether, and we're missing a word here, there it says lack of transparency, whether it's transparent or not, or if those biases are present. But it's a whole strategic process. And I think with the CQ model, this is where AI and CQ really tie together when it comes to strategy. It's what you're doing and your strategy behind it and what your output is. And then ultimately it's the CQ action, which is the last one. Are you ensuring that you're applying responsible practices? So do you refine your prompts? Are they intentional? Do you really critically think about them? Are you verifying the information, how accurate they are? And are you adjusting based on, whatever the evidence is that comes out or what you might find? So really strengthening what you're finding using those critical thinking skills. And all of these, again, tie back to competency 3.3 in the AI standards. So now I'll pass it to Jenny for the third strategy.
And I'm going to let y'all know you've just got a couple of minutes left on your time, okay? Coming up.
Yes, I will. Yes, thank you, Erin, for the reminder. We're going to speed run through this. So my slide for practical applications, I focused on instruction specifically, since I know we have a lot of librarians here. We won't have much time to dive too deep into it, but I structured this slide into the most amount of time you have with students, or the least amount of time to the most amount of time. So with one-shot sessions, I know that they're a little controversial, but this is definitely something that you can implement CQ in. It can be structured around AI or other AI, other topics with AI tool integration. But due to lack of time restraints, you might only be able to focus on one aspect of CQ. Class visits, a little bit more time. They're a great way of demonstrating to a class how to use AI ethically, especially in their assignments, with instructor permission, of course. And this is a great way to demonstrate the importance of the human touch of that, talking to a librarian, emphasizing the need for the library on campus. And this type of session has a little bit more time, so you can focus maybe on one or two aspects of CQ, maybe CQ strategy and action, or drive and knowledge. And finally, library curriculum. This can look very different in all types of libraries. This is coming from my perspective at a community college, which has a course that the librarians teach that focus specifically on research and how to conduct research. So you can implement the CQ model into your class curriculum. So definitely this has way more time. You might have a whole semester, a whole quarter, depending on your system. You can really talk about all four skills of CQ, just like we did today in our presentation. So I will skip over the key takeaways since we don't have much time. I'll just give you a quick overview. We just really want to emphasize that AI technologies cannot be culturally intelligent, so responsible AI use requires critical evaluation rather than just blind acceptance. But if you're interested, don't worry, we uploaded these slides onto the Gale conference web it'll be available. And so feel free to access these and you can look back on our key takeaways. Finally, if you guys are interested or want to learn more about our project as a whole, kind of the work that we're doing, please feel free to scan the QR code or email us if you have any questions. Let me look at the time that we did not get to today. Please email us. Feel free to reach out and we will contact you and answer any questions you may have. And that is all for us today. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you all so much. That was wonderful. Please, everyone, join me in thanking our speakers. This was a very interesting session.